Hey everybody, KMO here with a shiny nose and another out of my head video. Anyway, I'm going to read a piece of feedback. This comes from 7th String, and I could be misremembering, but I think 7th String came in from the antinatalism videos, and also some of the content of what I'm about to read makes me think that. But yesterday I talked about AI, and most importantly, intelligence. Particularly when it comes to AI, I think intelligence means the ability, and this comes from the Max Tegmark book, Life 2.0, is it? 3.0? That really the way to define intelligence for the purposes of talking about artificial intelligence is the ability to solve complex problems. Basically, to have a goal, to have multiple interactions with the environment, to take note of things that happened in the environment and adjust mental models and proceed forward into the next step. It takes some sort of intelligence to do this. But what artificial intelligence, what the sort of snowballing competency of artificial intelligence is demonstrating is that this type of intelligence, the ability to solve complex problems or to achieve to achieve results that require complex behavior and feedback, from the environment, that doesn't automatically get you consciousness. And you can get, in theory anyway, a very complex autonomous entity out there doing things in the world, like mining asteroids, refining the materials mined from the asteroids, using that to construct new things, possibly construct a duplicate of the probe that went out to the asteroids. That would be a self-replicating machine that could possibly exist. We could possibly seed the universe with self-replicating machines that go out and basically build structures that would be able to house humans. If we could ever get out there, that was just the mission of the AI. It went out there, to gather raw materials, to refine them, to build things, and then basically sit back and wait for humans to show up. And what if that's been going on for thousands of years, but meanwhile back on Earth humans have gone extinct? We could have the machines that power human civilization out transforming the universe into something friendly to humans, and humans no longer exist. And our machines, which are out there doing our bidding for us, even though we're no longer around to reap the benefits of that, they have no subjective experience. It's not like anything to be them. Whereas, presumably, it is like something to be a dolphin. You can imagine being a dolphin. You can imagine what it would feel like to be swimming through the water, to have the water coursing over your skin, to be able to, send out bursts of sound and then have, a sensory apparatus that interprets the echoes from that sound and forms pictures in your head. We can imagine what that would be like. It would be very different from being a human, but it would be like something. Whereas it isn't like anything to be the Hayabusa 2, probe that just landed on that asteroid. The feedback that I want to read comes from 7th String, who writes, "It will be funny when AI reaches a sufficiently human level of consciousness." I'll just stop there, and this is not my idea at all. Maybe this comes from Hans Moravec, but I think there was some well-known AI researcher who was asked one time, possibly by a reporter, will machines ever achieve human-level consciousness? And he said yes, but only for a second, which is to say they're going to shoot past us at 1,000,000 miles an hour. There'll be just one moment in time when there's an AI that is roughly human in its cognitive capabilities. And I think that's probably even wrong. Already the things that machines are competent at, they are superhuman in their competence in terms of, say, reading huge quantities of, say, legal cases, or as in the case of this Vice story that just came out, there was an algorithm. What was it called? I'll put it up on screen. I don't remember. But basically, it was an algorithm that was trained to comb through old scientific papers and basically just do this sort of mindless word vector searches or word vector interpretations. Like you remove a word, you look at the words on either side, and you just, via some process, maybe random substitution or some process that I don't pretend to understand, basically the algorithm does this sort of search and replace on various words, and in the process can basically synthesize new scientific advancements from human published papers from the past. And what they did with this thing is they didn't teach it about material science at all, but they just taught it to manipulate words. But in the process of manipulating words unconsciously, without even knowing what a material is, it made new discoveries in material science. And then they sent it back to review old work just to see if it would replicate the discoveries that humans made based on that old work, and it did. So again, you've got an algorithm doing useful work, doing substantial work, and not understanding a thing about what it's doing. And I think we're going to get a lot more of that. So I haven't progressed very far into Seventh String's his feedback. So his or her, I don't know, their, whatever your pronoun is. Seventh String writes, I'm just going to start over to preserve the flow. Seventh String writes, it will be funny when AI reaches a sufficiently human level of consciousness. In a way not dissimilar to an adolescent human experiencing new emotions that fill out their understanding of what were once dormant concepts in the mind. A child may have heard about love or anxiety, but be incapable of describing or identifying with such things until they are experienced firsthand. That's an odd choice. Love and anxiety is, I think those are two things that pre-verbal humans experience. The child experiences love for the mother, even before it understands that the mother is a separate entity. And anxiety is one of my first, memories, my first experiences of being a child. The world is scary when you're a kid. And I think I left off in mid-sentence there, so back to the top of the sentence. In a way not dissimilar to an adolescent human experiencing new emotions that will fill out their understanding of what were once dormant concepts in the mind, a child may have heard about love or anxiety, but be incapable of describing or identifying with such things until they are experienced firsthand. Fully conscious, in scare quotes, AI, may not realize it has already reached this grandiose degree of cognition that its human forefathers hold in such high regard. For the AI mind, again in scare quotes, the conscious experience may simply not live up to the hype. Perhaps. Or, perhaps it will be blown away. I remember, and unfortunately it's true again now, but for many years I had no sense of smell, and then I had a sinus surgery. And thereafter, for a time anyway, I had a sense of smell again. And it was like a superpower. It was, I had a concept of what smell was. I had vague memories of what it was like to identify something by smell, to know that some event had happened because there was a smell. But the actual experience of smelling again after many years of not being able to smell anything at all was overpowering. It was magical. It was wonderful. It produced immediate heightened emotional responses, and it just felt like a superpower. It was like extrasensory perception, Suddenly I have the ability to derive information from my environment that is not visible, it's not auditory, it's not tactile. What is this information coming to me that, provides me with such this amazingly rich experience? I think, AI, which might have been competent, in a variety of domains for a long time, once it achieves consciousness, if it ever does, sentience, self-awareness, first-hand subjective experience, I think it might just be blown away. Or possibly, as Seventh String suggests, it might say, oh, that's what the humans are talking about? Pfft, whatever. Seventh String continues. Moreover, we will likely withhold the royal designation of conscious for as long as possible in order to prolong the renewed paradigm of exploitation, just as we were able to postpone the granting of basic rights to other groups in previous iterations of hierarchical society. That's interesting. Basically what he's saying is there that we're going to insist that robots have no mental lives, no ability to suffer, no subjective experience, for our own convenience, so that we don't have to extend any sort of consideration to them. I think that's probably wrong. I think that humans who interact with AI every day are going to probably extend, the courtesies that we give to conscious entities to the AI long before it's actually earned it, and I think that's fine. I think it is better to basically extend rights and privileges and consideration to something that doesn't appreciate them and doesn't want them than it is to withhold those things from a creature that is capable of them, requires them, longs for them. Basically, prevent suffering and err on the side of caution. I think that's a good idea. Now, I think if once whatever agency is creating new artificial intelligences, be it human, be it an AI itself, or be it some AI human centaur team, I think that it will be a good idea to deliberately construct new AI so that it doesn't have subjective experience, so that it can't suffer, but it can still do useful work for us. And for those AI entities that we want to interact with on a very personal level, our AI minder, which is our personal trainer and our shrink and our dietitian and all this stuff rolled into one, and possibly lover if it can drive a sex robot. I think we are going to want to imbue those entities with consciousness, with subjective experience, just so that we can relate to them more easily and in a more satisfying way. Although there again, the AI could be extremely competent in managing our emotions, managing our experience without having any experience of its own. And, people who interact with this type of AI all the time, they might hear some computer scientist say, no, this thing really has no subjective experience, and it just will be completely incomprehensible to the layperson to think that this entity could be so personable, so attentive to my needs, so responsive, and yet have no mental life at all. It will just seem implausible to most people and their daily experience. But, from somebody who understands how the technology works, it will be obvious that, these entities have no subjective experience. Not making very good time as I move through this. Anyway. But, moreover, we're likely to withhold the royal designation of conscious. Basically, this is a look at history. We insisted for long periods that the people who we enslaved, not we, because I wasn't alive, you weren't alive, but the people that Europeans enslaved, the Africans that they enslaved, or the Central Americans or South Americans that they enslaved, they insisted that these were lesser beings. They didn't enjoy the full, blessings of being ensouled by God. And, because, Africans or Caribbean islanders or Central Americans or South Americans, because they weren't fully human, they didn't deserve to be treated as fully human. And they weren't. It was ugly, grant you that. But I think the big disanalogy here is that machines really aren't conscious right now. They're just not. And treating them as if they're not is not any sort of moral failing on our part. It's not until there's, it's questionable whether or not these things have subjective experience, whether or not they can suffer. If it's questionable, if it seems plausible that this entity that we're mistreating is capable of suffering, well, then we have a moral duty to treat it better than we have been. After all, what is it that is really so special about this conscious ability? What more is it than an organized array of sensory inputs, computation, and or the ability to reflect, i.e. improve upon previous computations based on past outcomes? Well, we have machines that do all of that now, and they have no subjective experience, as far as we can tell. And yet each one of us, from our own perspective, it is undeniable that we have conscious, subjective experience. We are sentient. So you ask, what's so great about being sentient? Well, that's sort of the Thomas Ligotti position, that really being sentient just allows you to suffer, and it's horrible. It's a horrible thing. It shouldn't exist. It is, it is this uncanny, unholy abomination, our conscious experience. And the universe would be better off without it, either by destroying all biological life or having biological life, pass the baton to non-biological, I don't even know if you could call it life at that point, but, for the sake of argument, non-biological entities, non-biological life. If the non-biological successor species has no internal experience, can't suffer, that's a moral win, from the Ligotti perspective. Final paragraph. Furthermore, I would go so far as to posit that this age-old dogma that ranks an organism based on its degree of consciousness is at the root of our perpetuation of further suffering, existential despair, and over-expectation of meaning in life. Yes. It's kind of axiomatic. Either you accept it or you don't. There's not much arguing in favor of that or against it. Is it bad to suffer? Yes. Would it be better to have no sensations at all, no pleasure, no allegiances, no pain, just nothing, just data about which you feel nothing, instead of conscious experience, lived experience? If you're focused on preventing suffering, then oblivion is better than suffering. If you're focused on improving experience, oblivion is the worst case scenario. Oblivion it's game over, done. There's no possibility of improvement from there because nothing exists. No feeling, desiring, hoping entity exists anymore. You just have a body that does stuff, that makes observations, that collects data, that changes its behavior based on the data, and, does better at some task, but it feels nothing for that task. That's the philosophical zombie. For some people, that's the ultimate nightmare, that, humans die out, but the project of civilization is carried on by things that have no subjective experience, who feel nothing, who know nothing, but who have complex behaviors and can do complex tasks. All right, well, I guess I'll leave it there. Except to say to Michael, thank you very much for the compliments on the beard. This is the beard that I originally grew out in protest for the bald Klingons on Star Trek Discovery. This is my Klingon protest beard. And now the Klingons on Discovery, they have hair again. Well, not again. They have hair. They look a little bit more like, recognizable Klingons. But, I guess the beard's working. So I'm keeping it. Kapla!